Hello guys, welcome to the Vray workflow with ZBrush and Substance Spinner. Sorry, my microphone is far away. Alright, so I have this asset sculpted in ZBrush. I have some rock, have a door like this, okay, have the roof and then the ground. Okay, that's all I have in this asset. And then I have textured it in Substance Spinner, okay, and I have the same model, low resolution model in Maya. Okay, so let's examine how the entire workflow for the rendering in Maya using Vray. Okay. So unfortunately, my Vray renderer is somehow down because of the stupid dongle thing. Installing Vray is the hardest thing ever in the universe, in my opinion. Even they give you all the instruction and everything, it's just the dongle they give me doesn't really work on my machine. But it should work with the trial version. I will have some watermark, but that doesn't really matter to me. Anyway, so the first thing I want to talk about is how to transfer detail from ZBrush to Maya. But instead of using a normal map, we're gonna try the most detailed way of transferring detail, which is a displacement map. Okay. Oh, before I do that, let me go back to Maya and then first do some basic lighting in Vray. Make sure I'm using the Vray renderer. The setting here will be very quick setting. I'm gonna use the exterior quick setting. Maybe the GI can be a little bit higher, and then I'm gonna just use a dome light. Okay. Now for the dome light, I'm gonna use the same lighting I used in Substance Spinner. Okay, which if you take a look at the image here, it's actually just this. Okay. Oh, it's the exposure there. Shouldn't do anything over there. Okay. So where can I get this map? Well, if you go to the folders here, go to the this PC, C drive, and then program files. If you have installed your Substance Spinner here, you should be able to find the directory. But I bought Substance Spinner on Steam, so I have to find my Steam. And then it's gonna be underneath the Steam apps common Substance Spinner 2, and then when you get into Substance Spinner, you can find these resources, and then shelf, and then environment exterior, and if you look at the name, it's called the panorama. Okay, panorama. Let's go look for it. It's here, the last one. I can actually just copy the entire path and go back to Maya, and then just use DOM texture and load the same texture for my lighting. Okay, which is this guy here. Okay, open it. Alright, for my camera, I'm gonna go grab it and use the Vray physical camera, just to get more accurate rendering, or at least more control. Alright, and then I can go to renderer, Vray IPR, just to view it. Okay, it appears to be too dark. Okay, one thing I can do, of course, is using the extra Vray attributes F number here and lower that down to something like 3. It's not enough. I can bring up the ISO to like 200 if I can get better results. I can also just go to the dome lights and make it twice as bright. Okay, so that should be good enough. To rotate the lighting, I can go to the Vray placement environment texture and then drag the horizontal rotation. Let's go back a little bit. Alright. So now I have the basic lighting, I think. the specularity here is too strong, but we can leave that alone. Maybe that's because I'm using a Boolean material, but anyway. So the first thing I want to introduce you to do is how to convert or create a displacement map from ZBrush. Okay, here. Let me stop Maya's render real quick. Okay, I go back to ZBrush. I'm gonna go for Z plugin, Multimap Explorer, and check on displacement. In the export sections, options, open displacement map. You want to check on adaptive. The mid value here, yours, if you're using default setting 0.5, is the default setting. Drag that down to 0. Okay. Use 32-bit EXR. Okay. So that's all you have to do. Adaptive on, mid to 0, 32-bit EXR. You don't need 3-channel or smooth UV. Okay. Let me export all maps. Okay. Okay, and that smoothing UV also will depending on if you're in Maya, if you're rendering it using the 3 preview or just 1. Okay, that's if you're rendering it using the smooth preview, then you have to check that. That never really works properly for the preview though, I think. So you better just keep it this way. Okay. So no smooth preview. Alright. Anyway, so let me go back here and then define. After defining those, you can also check on the flip V, because ZBrush will treat the UV in a reversed way on the V direction or vertical direction. So check that on. And then the map size will be the resolution of the map, but that hardly matter here to me. I think 2K is already good enough, but you can go for 4K if you wanted to. Let's go create maps. Okay. And then I'm gonna create a new folder here, and I'm gonna call it source images. Okay. And then the naming here doesn't really do anything. It will always rename it to the name of the sub too, so I'm not gonna bother that. Oh, sorry about that. Let me cancel that. I'm not gonna do this guy here. I'm actually gonna do this rock. Okay, so that because that guy doesn't really need a displacement map. In normal map is good enough for that. But for the rock, I need the displacement map. So let me go out, click on it to switch to that, and then create all maps. All right, save it. Okay, this is gonna generate a 32-bit EXR image as the displacement map. Okay, now a couple options we did here, like the mid color to 0. It's because Vray treat 0, meaning complete black, as not doing anything to the model. Any value bigger than 0 or color-wise, any bright grayish color will be bumping things out or pushing vertices out. Anything that is lower than 0, which means negative values or darker than black, will be considered as pushing the vertices in. So basically what happens if when you use displacement map, Vray will subdivide the model just like what ZBrush does, and then push vertices around based on the displacement map you give it. Alright, we go back to Maya. To use that displacement map, you have to grab the model, go to create Vray, and then Vray displacement, and use apply single Vray displacement node to selection. When that is done, you will have a new node called Vray displacement. Okay, let me give it a suffix rock on the right side. Okay, and then you can select it and then go to displacement material and then choose the file and load in the displacement map we did earlier. So that's gonna be UAW finals displacement map. Start source images, and then this guy. Okay, this is the one I exported earlier from ZBrush. If you look at the image, it's just a black and white color. Okay, notice that some of the area are super dark. Those are negative values. Okay, so open it. Okay, one more thing you have to do is go to attributes, vary, and then allow the negative colors. Otherwise, it will not be able to read that. Okay, if you go to renderer and go vary IPR again, you should be able to see that the rock here now are having some detail already. Okay, I think the reflection is super shiny. Let me lower down the specular color to 0 maybe, just to see the bumpiness we have here on the rock. See, now the model are actually being re-subdivided and then pushed around based on the displacement map, so you have all the smaller details generated here. Okay, so that's basically what displacement map is. If you want to have more control of the quality and the amount of displacement map, you can go select the node Vray created when we do the Vray single Vray displacement node to selection. You can actually go to attribute Vray and then assign a displacement control. Okay, here the displacement amount will be controlling how much displacement will be applied. One meaning it's going to give you the same result as the brush has, but you can also make that stronger by typing in 2. Okay, it's going to bumping things out more. Normally it's not recommended because when you push more you will get like really noisy edges. Okay, let me go back to 1. The shifting is pushing the vertices all in and out. Okay, so meaning that if I type in 10 on this shift, it's gonna just make it all go out. The result will be the rock will be bigger which is not needed that much either, so 0. Okay, the quality of the displacement map is actually pretty nice in the default settings, but if you want it to be higher, you can go to the attribute vary and then you can go for the subdivision and displacement quality, and here you can change the edge length. Okay, if you change that to 1, it's gonna keep subdividing it more until all the edges of the model will be smaller than 1 pixel when you're rendering it. Okay, and also it has a limitation of max subdivision, meaning that it will only subdivide it 4 times. If that doesn't fulfill the requirement here, which is making the length of every edge smaller than 1 pixel, then it will stop subdividing either way. So through those 2 attributes you cannot be able to control it to be really detailed, but you know, this is actually good enough, so I'm not gonna mess with it too much anyways. I think I'm gonna actually kick it off because I don't need to have it to be controlled. Anyway, so that's displacement map for the rock. Okay, and you can use the same technique for the other rocks, the floor, and even the door. Okay, alright, so let's move on to substance spinner. Okay, so this is what substance spinner have. I have textured it like this. Okay, so let's see how we can get the material from substance spinner to Vray, and probably make it work as the exactly like here in substance spinner, because it's kind of a little bit hard to do. I think substance spinner is more like a real-time render engine, so its renderer and material setup, like its PBR material setup, is not actually convertible to traditional renderers like Vray. Okay, because in PBR render system, what it does is based on the roughness and metallic, it will actually calculate the diffuse weight, so their energy, the energy that has been reflected out and will not be diffused in. Okay, so it's almost balanced. That means you can never break the law of physics. That's why in PBR material you have very low channels. You have only color, metallic, roughness. That's it. Okay, because those 3 are are calculatable, so anything you change here will affect the others internally. But for renders like Vray, it does not limit you from breaking the laws of physics. For example, if you have a Vray material here, okay, Vray material can do diffuse like that. It can also do reflection like that. So it's gonna be super bright. That's just wrong. Okay, it's not physically correct. Even those materials are called energy conservative material, which they're trying to preserve the material in the energy on the material in a realistic way, but still you cannot be able to actually make them all super strong and then eventually get the wrong results or non-accurate results. But anyway, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means the renderer here is more flexible. But anyway, let me go back to Substance Spinner. Okay, and let's see how we can export the images. For example, I want to do the ground here. Okay, let me go File, File, Export Textures. And here what I want to use is, of course, the Vray preset. Okay, if you look at the Vray preset here, it's basically exporting 7 maps actually: emissive, normal, height, AOR, glossiness, reflection, and diffuse. I don't have anything emissive, so I'm gonna actually delete that. I don't need any height map either, so delete that too. That leaves me only 5, so it just makes my file smaller. Okay, the preset here, I mean, that's their own preset, right? So this has to be correct. If they cannot make it right, how can I do? So let's just use their default setting. Let's go back to export. Okay, the format is defaulted to PNG, but you can use other format if you wanted to. Okay, and the location, I'm gonna do that to the source image again, and then just go export. That will generate all the maps needed for all the texture set or objects in here. Okay, it's gonna take a little while because I'm using 4K image for everyone. It's probably better to go back to Maya and stop this render. Okay. Meanwhile, here in Maya, I can go node editor. Okay. I think I can dock the node editor somewhere here. Okay. Anyway, I can then go to the ground material. That's a boolean here now. I can copy the name and swap the type from boolean to a Vray material, and then paste the name back. Okay, and then I can grab the material by press the select here and then edit it like that. That's the ground material now, and that's a Vray material. Okay. So what I want to do is apply the images generated by Substance Spinner to Vray. Okay. Again, let's do the ground. The ground textures will be those ones: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Drag them in, and then I can grab all the images and then realign them this way, or organize them this way, so I can easily see what they are. I have the diffuse map here. That's easy to do. Let me turn on the IPR so we can see the update. So what I want to do is first assign the diffuse map to the diffuse color of the ground material. Okay, that's gonna assign the texture. Okay, so there's nothing wrong here. I can then use normal map and connect the normal map to the bump map, middle mouse drag it to the map. Okay, and then of course it's not a bump map, it's a normal, so I'm gonna change that to normal map in tangent space. Okay, now immediately you see something kind of wrong. The image gets super dark when I use the normal map. Okay, apparently that is actually wrong. Their official documentation recommended that you change the color space from sRGB to raw. Okay, and that's gonna fix that problem, and you see the bumpness here is generated. Okay, so that's easy. Glassness, oh sorry, let's move on to reflection. Actually, reflection is this, and drag this to the reflection color, and according to their official website, the BRDF tab they're using is GGX. Okay, in Substance Painter, so you can switch that to GGX too. Alright, so that's the reflection. Okay, another thing is the glassness. Glassness, you just need to connect that to reflection glassness. Okay, it's gonna make the necessary reflection. If you look at the ground now, you see it's reflecting out like that. Okay. All right. Now for things like the glassness and normal, they're the same requirements. So the color space, instead of using sRGB, you have to change that to raw. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't really update. So let me restart the IPR render. All right. So now I have the shininess here on the water area, just like that. Okay. All right. Let me go back to Maya. Now there's only one thing left, which is the IOR. Okay. So the IOR is kind of weird here. If you connect the IOR, apparently the IOR has to be connected to the Fresnel IOR, which is this one. I can uncheck that to allow individual controls on the Fresnel IOR. I'm going to drag my IOR there to the Fresnel IOR like that. Okay. It's going to apply the IOR on it. But it doesn't really make that much of a difference. If you really look at it, here, you can view it this way. See, the IOR is actually just this. Okay. The color here is something like 1.5 or so. So the problem is IOR for water or anything else, they are actually bigger than 1. But I'm not getting the correct information because this value here is around 0.5 or 0.6-ish. So you can actually try to use Nuke to view it, to see the information there. Okay, so this is Nuke. Go back to my image. If you view the IOR, which is here, oh, actually dragging them away. But anyway, if you view the IOR one, which is this guy, okay, connected to here. Let me stop my Maya render. It's taking performance. Okay. So back to Nuke. If you look at the IOR here, that's gonna be on the R channel here. You see it's something like 0.4, 0.3. That can be right for IOR, because we all know that in real life water IOR is like 1.375 or 25. I don't quite remember, but something around 1.3 to 1.4. This is something lower than 1. Okay, so if you go back to Substance Painter and then look at the export settings, configuration, Vray, see that the IOR here, if you have your cursor there, it's called 1 divide IOR, which you kind of know what it means. It's actually not IOR at all. It's 1 divided by IOR. Okay, so this is wrong. You can never achieve the correct IOR by using what Substance Painter gives you. It's plain wrong, and it can never be right, in my opinion, because this is more like a game engine level real-time rendering. Okay, so how do we convert that back? Well, according to what's indicated there, in here what you want to do is invert it back. So I can use a multiply divide. Okay. And then I can divide the alpha by 1 using divide. Okay. And then the result goes to the LR. So that way I flip it back. And if you look at the results here in Nuke, if I perform the same thing, okay, so this value is wrong, right? This value is wrong, but what if I merge it with, somehow I cannot drag it. I merge it with a constant, a constant value here, using maybe 1. Okay, stop that. I'm gonna use 1 to divide, which is, where is divide? Here. So if I use 1 to divide that and view the result, see now I get some value like 2.4, you know. The reason it's wrong here as 2.44 is also because I don't want sRGB, I want linear color. Okay, if you do that again, you see 1.5, right? That's actually about the right IOR actually. See that 1.5? That's what Vray can recognize as a correct IOR. So in theory, this should work. Okay, alright. Let's do the rendering again. Now you see the IOR is making the water feels more like water now. Okay. But still, I think there's one more thing wrong with your system, which is if I have a lot of noise in the normal map, it will go crazy on the edges. So some of the edges are actually having weird black dots on it. Okay. So there are no solution. I think the raw, even you change that to raw, depending according to their documentation, it doesn't do that. If you go to Vray and then maybe use a texture input gamma and then redo the render, you will get plain wrong results. So I don't think you can actually make it nicely. So oftentimes what I can do is actually change the bump map to something like 0.5, 0.2, something like that, just to, you know, ease the pain there. And that should perform better. Okay. So I get rid of that weird thing. Now my ground is pretty rough and then my water area is shiny now. Okay. So that should be the solution for general texture for Vray from Substance Painter. Okay. So for the normal map, I really don't know what's happening. Their normal map will cause the weird effect down there. Okay. So some lower value could be able to fix that, but still you're getting some weird shininess. That's not because of the roughness is wrong or the metallic is wrong. That's because this normal map is doing something crazily wrong. Okay, I think that's what that is, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, but if you see any workflow that can fix that, I would like to know. Okay, because without the normal map, it will just perform fine. Okay. So let's see. Alright, this is now working quite nicely for me. So what else can I do in Vray? Well, instead of relying on this simple texture here, I can actually use my own layering system in Maya to achieve the same variation. If you look at Substance Painter, the only difference is that in Substance Painter, only the water area is kind of like shiny, other areas are plain rough, right? So what that means is that in Shadow Maya, what I can do is I can actually use a different material to separate the water and the ground into two different materials and then blend them together. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I am gonna go break the glossiness and then the IOR from what Substance Painter gives me, delete those two. Okay, for the ground material, I will just make it non-reflective at all, so amount will go to 0. Okay, so it's rough, maybe a little bit if I want to be super realistic, but anyway, so the ground is really rough. I just need a water layer applied only on those dark areas. But before I do that, let me create a Vray material here first, and then I'm gonna name this guy Vray material water. Okay, now for the water, I'm gonna make the diffuse color quite dark. GGX reflection all the way up. Glossiness can go down a little bit. Fresh now, unlock it. I'm gonna change that to 1.325 for water's IOR. Okay. I don't need that shading group either. Okay. Now another material I'm gonna create is called a Vray blend material. Okay. Also rename it to Vray blend material ground. Okay. Let me drag the Vray material ground to the floor. Okay. It will disappear. This is because if you select the material, it doesn't have any inputs. Let me drag my original ground material as the base material. Okay, and then drag the water material as the coat material 0. Okay, now what you get is kind of like the blending of those two. Okay, if you go grab the blend amount to 0, it's pure ground material. If you grab it, drag it all the way up to 1, it's pure water material. Okay, so all I have to do is find out the mask, which is the dark area there for the water, and apply that on the blend amount. And fortunately, I already defined that in Substance Painter. Here, if I go to the ground material, I have the water right here. Okay, and the mask is there already, so I'm gonna export the mask to file. Okay, and then I'm gonna go look for my source image. I'm gonna export it here as a JPEG. Call it ground water mask. Okay, save it. Alright, now go back to the Vray. I can then use this one, the ground water mask, drag it to the node editor, and then use that as the alpha or the blend amounts of the water material. Okay, if I do that, then you can see now I can have the water area specifically defined using this mask with the blend material, and that way I get really clean results. And another good thing about it is that I can now refine it. Like, okay, maybe I want the water to be brighter. I can drag the color to make it brighter and even more bright. I can change it to whatever way I want. It's non-destructive, and what I got here is what I got here, right? That means I don't have to go back and forth, back to Substance Painter, and then maybe tweak it, because, you know, it's kind of dark here. I can achieve the water here by just borrowing the mask I created in Substance Painter and use a Vray blend material. That way, I have full control and I got what I got, right? What I see here is what I got. That's really important. In CG production, the most disappointing thing is that all those different packages are having different systems. Unreal Engine, Unity, Substance Painter, Vray, and Quixel. Okay, Vray, Arnold, Mental Ray. It's really hard to get the same result from one package to another. If you're using this final package here like Vray, you better get the result here in Vray instead of relying on another package and then always go back and forth. Okay, that's not gonna make it feels comfortable to do. Okay, so that's why this workflow by using the mask generated by Substance Painter will give you a much more convenient workflow. Even it's a little bit hard to set up, but you have full control. And I think that's really important. Anyway, so for example, okay, maybe I want the ground to be a little bit glossy too. I can change the ground, the amount of the reflection on the ground too, and maybe lower down the glossiness a little bit. And I can have the Fernal IR to something brighter. I can make the ground also kind of white too if I wanted to. Okay, or I can just make it go all 0. So I can, you know, tweak them all separately without breaking anything. Okay. All right. So that's one of the things I want to go over in this tutorial, the Vray blend material with a mask. All right. Now moving on to another technique. If you look at the water, it's there, it's okay, right? But what if I want water? I want the water to also, you know, going down a little bit. Okay, to bump it down. Then I may need a bump map. But the thing is, the bump map slot on the ground material is already being occupied. The water, I can bump it down, but it shouldn't make any big difference because what you see on the water will be only the water. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is using another Vray material, which is the Vray bump material. Okay, now this Vray bump material will then be assigned to the ground again. Okay, the ground disappeared one more time. That's because this Vray bump material now doesn't have any inputs. Let me drag my original blend material as the base material, and you see the ground should be popping back. Okay, and then for the bump map, then what I can do is I can use the mask I used for the water. The reason being for that is because the water, this map here, not only can be used as a mask, of course, but it can also perform like a bump map. Okay, so I'm gonna use that as the bump map. Okay, so now you see the water is being bumped a little bit. Okay, I can make it go in like that or go out. Okay, you can see the effect there. It's going out like that, it can go in like that. I don't need that really that much, so maybe -0.7 or so to just sink the water area down a little bit, just to make it look more convincing. Okay, so Vray bump, very useful sometimes. It's even more useful when you're creating hard surface metal with some pen on it. You want to make the pen bump out and in, you can use the Vray bump material. Okay. Alright. Let me go move on to another object, which is the door. Okay, for the door, let me copy the name and then change the tab to the a Vray material again, and then paste the name here just to be able to change the name quite easily. For the door material, I'm gonna actually only use the diffuse and normal map it gives me. Okay, because I don't really think it's shiny at all. So just to make things quick and easier, bump map will be connected with a normal map, and the normal map has to be again a raw format. Okay, and then the color diffuse map will go to the diffuse color. Okay, all right. So another thing I want to do is I want to have cracks across the surface of the door. Okay, I can do that in Substance Thinner. It doesn't really take that much. I can create a new layer, repeat it, right, and then use that also as a bump map or something with a crack texture. But the thing is, when I export it, it's gonna be having a resolution limitation, for example. Or the reason for that is because the texture will be baked on a 4K or a 2K image, right? So the repetition layer you did will not be able to update to higher resolution when you repeat it more. Okay, so in Maya though, if you can create that kind of texture, especially the texture you have to repeat a lot, then in here you will get exactly the same resolution, even you make it smaller. When it gets really closer, it's also quite clean and sharp. Okay, I can demonstrate that here. Let me go look for a crack texture seamless. Okay, and go for images, and then maybe that one. Okay, that's the one I used in class. Let me save it to the source image again. Let's call it crack texture. Okay, now go back here and then grab the crack texture. So what I mean is, if I use this as the diffuse color, right, it's gonna be like that. The benefit of you doing that in Maya is that you can repeat it 100 times, okay? And we'll get close. I mean, maybe I repeated too much. Okay, let's just do maybe 20 times, just to prove my point here. So the texture is repeated, but I'm still getting a high resolution result. My render, because I'm using the trial version, I can only render 60, 100 by 40, 450 or something, so I cannot see quite clearly. But if you're using the fully lessened version, you should be able to see higher quality here. So this one is super crisp clear. Well, if I want to try that in Substance Spinner, okay, can just import that as a texture. Okay, this is the crack texture. Okay, I can use that. Let me create a new fill layer. I can use that as the base color. Oh, it's on the ground, but you know, that shouldn't make any difference. So for example, I repeated this guy 20 times. Okay, I'm getting blurrier results. See that? If I repeat it even more, like 50 times, I'm getting even smaller, blurrier results, because it cannot just handle that using a 4K texture with this kind of repetition. The same thing applies to things like terrain. You cannot just use a 8K texture and hope that will work with the terrain, because terrain is just too big. The same thing applies here. Okay, so you will still get the detail. Don't know why it's getting darker when I get super close. You'll get the same amount of resolution even you repeat it too much. Okay, I just cannot get closer than that though. But you'll see that it's still there. I can get a little bit more closer maybe, but it's getting super dark. Anyway, it should be still there. Alright, can clearly see a little bit, but anyway, so my point is, doing this here will not cause you resolution issue. Anyway, so let's say, okay, I want to apply this kind of crack across my model here. So what do? Well, if you have the texture here and you have the diffuse map, the first instinct you may want to do is probably multiply them together. But the thing is, when you multiply them together, you cannot control the amount or the opacity of, you know, the top layer. So what I'm going to do is using a layered texture here. Okay, middle mouse drag the crack texture. I can close that green one, it's useless. And middle mouse drag the diffuse into the layer stack too. So now I have the door diffuse and the crack. If I connect the result to the diffuse color, okay, I'm still getting the crack. But if you go back to the layer texture and middle mouse drag the diffuse in front of the crack, you got the diffuse. Okay, let me drag the crack back to the front. So that's just like a layering system in Photoshop. So what I can do now is I can use multiply for the crack. It's going to multiply the crack on top of the diffuse. Okay, and then the good thing about this is I can change the alpha to something smaller to make it half transparent, It's hard to see there. Let me go back to the crack texture and maybe repeat it only 5 times. Sorry about my resolution here, because I'm using the trial version. It's all blurry everywhere. Okay, but you can see the effect here. Okay, so I can make it lesser by lowering down the alpha. Okay. Let's say I also want to bump it in. Then what I can do is I can create a Vray bump material, right? And drag that to the base material, to the Vray bump, drag Vray bump to the door. And then if I want to bump things in, I can use the crack texture as the bump map. Okay, and then maybe just make that stronger so we can see it easily. Now you see the crack is now bumping in, right? What if I want to define where it is? I don't want it to be happening everywhere. Well, that's the strong suit of substance thinner, right? So I can go grab the door material and then maybe give it a new fill layer, give it a black mask, and then I can use a any brush here, maybe like the actually I like the mold brush a lot for some reason, but anyway, I can use that. My eye is rendering. Let me cancel it. Okay, so I can then define the mask here, maybe only on the bottom area here, maybe a bit here on the top, you know. So I have defined it here, and then what I can do is I can just directly export this mask again to Maya. I'm gonna call this one crack texture mask. Okay, and then go back to Maya, and I can use the crack texture mask here as the mask for the alpha of the crack texture here. So instead of making it go everywhere, I can use this mask to control the alpha of the crack. That way you see now the color of the crack is being redefined, but the bumpiness is not. I can do that very easily too by dragging the mask onto the bump multiplier. Okay. That way you see now the crack will only happen on the area I defined in substance thinner. Okay, like that. So you can do a lot of things using the layering system instead of Vray. Okay. And it's also quite non-destructive. Alright, so that's supposed to be everything I want to introduce today. You can use the same technique applied on the rocks and the roof of the door and everything. Okay. Anyway, let's make it render a little bit. We capture it. Another thing I wanted to point out here is okay, capture it, is that for the graphic quality of the thing you're doing, I think it's mostly depending on the skill of the artist. For example, if you compare the result from Vray to the result maybe in substance thinner, okay, maybe you can turn on the rendering. So we'll render that using array. See that they're pretty similar color-wise. Okay, so the quality of your asset determines the graphic capability or the graphic quality of your results. It really doesn't. If you are a really good artist, the package shouldn't affect you that much. I would say like 80% or even more than 80% of the graphic will depending on the artist, not the package you're using, no matter it's Vray, Mental Ray, Arnold, RenderMan, or Substance Spinner or game engines. We can also compare the array render. Let me zoom out. Okay, so this is the array render. I'm gonna put it here, maybe down like that. Okay, and I have another two render, another two game engines also imported to the same, imported in the same asset, which is gonna be the Unreal Engine here. Okay, so this is what it looks like in Unreal Engine. Let me move it to the top. Okay, and then another thing is in Unity. Okay, so this is what Unity looks like. Hopefully I can, oh, I cannot do that. Okay, let me drag it down. So this is what Unity can give me. Alright. Cannot make it easier. And this is what Vray can do. If you compare those graphics, you'll see that, well, they're actually pretty similar. Two game engines, two renderers, array renderer, Vray renderer. I just haven't threw the image, the texture for the rock yet, but this shit looks very close, no matter it's game engine or renderer like that. And sometimes they do have a little different, like in Unreal Engine and Unity, they look a little different, but that's also depending on, you know, the settings and everything. So you cannot get exactly the same result, but you can get something similar, and 80% of the quality will be depending on the asset created outside of the package. Okay, so again, don't bother too much on the package you're using. Think like an artist, and then just make sure that all the artistic aspect of the asset you're doing are actually all being thought through and very well controlled. If that's true, then your asset will look equally good in all those packages. Don't rely on the package too much. Okay, don't think, you know, I did it bad because of the render is not good. The graphic quality of all those packages are actually not that far different, in my opinion. It's just sometimes the some of the things you want to do, you have to do, are a little different. But for realistic things, you know, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. You can always achieve very high quality realistic ones in all those packages. Alright, that's for today's tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.